Welcome to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
Scientists in Colombia are claiming that they found and confirmed a piece of alien technology for the first time ever. If you haven't heard, about a week ago, an orb was recorded by the locals flying around the lands of Colombia until it was struck by lightning and fell out of the sky. It was then recovered by a civilian, and although the government asked them to hand it over, they refused to and instead handed it over to a group of scientists. Scientists then proceeded to perform tests and x-rays on the orb, which ultimately led to the conclusion that the object was of unknown origin. Now, the orb has strange symbols and something written on it in a very strange language, which was apparently decoded by AI. According to AI, the orb talks about the origin of birth through union and energy, as well as individual consciousness. Now, I've been seeing mixed reviews about this whole situation. While some people believe that this is a breakthrough and we're finally being told about alien technology, others believe that this is absolute nonsense and could just be some sort of elaborate hoax. But leave a like and let me know what you think about this in the comments.
I think without the video footage of this thing actually falling out of the sky, this likely wouldn't even be getting enough attention that we'd even be hearing about it. It seems suspiciously convenient, though, that the first time a civilian actually gets their hands on alien technology and hands it over to some scientists, he actually captures the thing crash landing on video. And did it look to anyone else like that thing should have been much larger than it ended up being? It looks like it's pretty far away whenever they're filming it in the sky, but if it's the size of a basketball, wouldn't it have been a lot harder to see from that distance? I just feel like it should have appeared smaller in the sky. I haven't really heard that much about this though, so I don't really have that strong of an opinion. I am very intrigued by it. I'm wondering if that's some secret drone from some US government black books project or something.
Oh, you want to see vanishing, dematerializing orbs, do ya? Well, I've got you covered, mate. Check the state of this object out, bruv. Right? This is from the USCBP, the Customs and Border Protection Agency, right? This was released on their website, coming from 2023. This freaking object, right, dematerializes, teleports through the floor, whatever you want. Looks like a metallic sphere in nature. What are we seeing everywhere today? Metallic orbs flying around, doing some funky stuff, alright? I'm going to kind of move myself up here for a second for you, ladies and gentlemen, alright? Because this is kind of going to get even funkier. Looks hella cool, right? And as it just kind of moseys on, it really does look metallic. And again, here we go, look. Hell, mate. Rewind that, alright? Let's check this again. This ain't no interdimensional Chinese lantern, space Brussels sprout. This is something more. What is going on with this? State of this object. Bruv. Disappears on the floor. Right? You can scream till the cows come home and you can say, oh, this is XYZ. It's so easy. No. I'm putting my foot down on this. This one is hella funky. Look. In a bit, bruv. Just as you... Oh, why can't we do that? I want to do that. You know? Just walk through stuff just because I feel like it. What do you guys think? Let me know, man.
That looked about the same size and shape of that orb that they caught in that last video. I'm really leaning toward these things being government drones now. I don't even think the writing on it is likely alien, but more likely something that was concocted by the government to appear alien in case one of these things fell out of the sky. If AI can backwards engineer the language and tell us what it's saying, I feel like that's a pretty big clue right there. If it were a true alien language, our AI algorithms would likely have no reference for anything that would assist assist them in decoding this language. The very idea that aliens even have a written language makes a ton of assumptions about the aliens and makes them extremely similar to us in that assumption. I think a real alien language would probably look so foreign to us that we wouldn't even recognize it as being written words. I could be making too many assumptions myself about how AI works, but it just makes sense to me that if our AI could decipher that language, we probably wrote it.
Let's talk about Real ID.
Real ID.
Real ID.
Real ID.
Oh, Real ID.
I'm not getting the Real ID.
It is a federalized identification system that everyone in the nation will have to have in order to fly domestically. They've been trying to pass this since the 80s in China. They had already passed a nationwide identification system. So everyone has something very similar to the Real ID in China. The next step was the social credit score. They gave like a list of things that happens to lower your credit score. So court rulings, so like refusing to pay debts, criminal convictions, traffic violations. So I saw one thing, jaywalking can ruin your social credit score.
And those cameras catch it all too.
Then unpaid taxes or fines. If your credit score gets lowered, that bans you from flying on a plane, a train, sometimes even a bus. Keeps you from enrolling your children in private schools, applying for certain jobs or promotions. This one was a crazy one. They can slow down your internet speed. Just little inconveniences to make your life miserable. And then public shaming via government lists or media alerts. So I saw this one thing where they literally have like a LED screen board in this one city, and they just display faces and names like this person jaywalked. They're just a terrible person. It's like public shaming. It's crazy.
I absolutely hate taking part in fear mongering. And when I feel like that's what's going on, I try to call it out. And I don't think that this is something that we have to worry about popping up just around the corner, but it is coming. They're talking about giving people jail time in Texas for posting memes about politicians. That's not supposed to be able to happen in the United States. And I'm not saying that anybody should be in a state of panic over this. You really shouldn't be in a state of panic over anything. I'm just saying we shouldn't be ignoring the signs as we all inch closer and closer to a system that's modeled after China. The people pulling the strings of our politicians are itching to get something like this implemented. They're not too happy about this mixture of the internet and America's brand of unfiltered free speech. It's become impossible to control the narrative. Doing something like this is pretty much their only shot of getting us all back under control, so they're absolutely gonna attempt it. I'm certain of that.
A lot of globe anti-flat earthers and even some flat earthers will say the sun's 3,000 miles high and 30 miles wide. That works, but it could be 1,500 miles wide and 15 miles wide, or it could be 7,500 miles high and 7.5 miles wide. Scaling and variance, we don't know. I'm making no claims on what the sun is, where it is, other than it's a local light, which we can prove by its rays. Go out on a moonlit night when there's scattered clouds, and you'll see that the moon is only lighting the clouds that are right next to it. Mm-hmm. If it was 250,000 miles away, it should light up all of the moon, all of them. What's the question you just asked? You asked me a question. All the other planets.
Yeah, because we can see stars moving in the sky, and we can track Mars and Jupiter and all that stuff.
Yeah. So
if there's no solar system, there's no planets.
Right. When you look at planets, I want to keep this really simple. There's a thing called the inverse square law. Oh, the math. People freak out. It's very easy. When you have an object and it's a certain size, move it farther or move it twice the distance away and it'll be a quarter of the size.
Right.
Okay? And it's the same with the brightness. If I have something that's 4 lumens here, I double it, it's 1 lumen.
Right.
Right? It's a quarter. And it's the same as you get closer. When you go out at night and look at I like looking at Jupiter because it's the brightest star.
Right.
You've seen it.
Yeah.
It's brighter than any other star, right? It's as bright as the sun, but it's just very small. So Jupiter, they tell us, is a gassy planet, and it's 4 times farther away from the sun than we are. So if our giant sun was right next to us, it would fill the whole sky, right? We move it 93 million miles away, and it's the size of a coin held at arm's length, right? That's how we see the sun. If we doubled that distance, it would be like the size of an eraser, like the end of an eraser. And if we doubled it again, so now it's 4 times farther, it would be pretty small. It would be very small. So if you were on Jupiter, that sun is literally like a large star at best. And you have to believe that distant sun is lighting up Jupiter. That light is reflecting off of the gassy surface, which isn't very reflective, all the way back to your eye, 400 million miles away, and we see it as bright as the sun. You're seeing a light in the sky. named after a god. That's all I can say.
I think this one makes sense with the explanation that's given as to how the light doesn't get diminished over distance and space, that it's because that light is in a vacuum instead of moving through an atmosphere full of particles that are scattering and diffusing the light. However, the idea that the light coming from Jupiter is just a reflection, that it's the sun's light reflecting off of its atmosphere and bouncing back to us from that distance, that I find a little difficult to believe. Is the atmosphere of Jupiter full of something reflective? Because all the images they've shown us of it make it look dark red and brown. Those aren't colors I think of whenever I think of something shiny. I love how these flat earth researchers will find these obvious things that we've been told that clearly can't be true, but that you just never stopped and thought about. Hey, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com.
Yo, let's talk about something really cool. Most people know the quote from Nikola Tesla that if you want the secrets to the universe, you need to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, right? I mean, the difference between a solid, a liquid, a gas, it's the intensity at which something vibrates. Everything is energy. Matter is not solid. It's vibrating particles that are held within an energetic field. This is why Einstein says the field is the sole influence of the particle. Vibration is how the energy moves. Every atom in your body vibrates. Emotions are vibrational patterns within your nervous system. Thoughts carry a vibrational signature within your brainwaves. And then frequency is simply how fast something vibrates. High frequency is fast, it's light, it's expansive. This is love, joy, gratitude. Low frequency is slow, it's dense, it's heavy. Shame, fear, resentment. You feel this. You feel this energetically. That's why when people are feeling down, they say they're feeling down. They're feeling low. They feel heavy. So let me give you a cool example. So I always thought, when you're watching movies, the way that you break glass is just by singing a high pitch, but that is not correct. What you do is you match the pitch and frequency of the glass, and then if you match it perfectly, it will start to vibrate so intensely that it will break. Now, you may have heard or not heard of this man, Edgar Cayce. He was an American clairvoyant from the 1800s. And I think I need to post some videos on him because his rabbit hole is so interesting. Like, yeah, there's things that he got wrong, but there's a lot that he got right. Now, he is famous for saying that the medicine of the future will be music and sound. Music, sound, energy, vibration, frequency. On the 1900s, there was a medical genius named Royal Rife, and he invented a machine where you could tune into specific frequencies. His hypothesis was that if you match the frequencies of certain illnesses, that you can cause them to disseminate. He understood that everything in your body, everything around you has its own unique vibration and frequency. So in the same way that matching the frequency of the glass causes it to break, you can match the frequency of and cause it to break. So they tested the machine on rats and it had 100% efficacy. Then they did a human trial with 16 people. With 14 of the 16 were signed off as clinically healed. He basically died penniless with his name dragged through the mud because he would not sell his technology to a certain group. You need to read about his story. I've posted about it in the past. It's crazy. Now, sounds have been used for healing since the beginning of time within shamanic circles, indigenous practices, even modern practices. Earth has its own natural frequency that is incredibly healing for human beings. This is why grounding is a thing, standing outside on the ground with your bare feet. Science shows that solfeggio frequencies work in healing people. Everything, remember, everything is energy, vibration, frequency. You can use different tools to tune your frequency. There was a study that came out of Japan where they tested the 528 hertz solfeggio frequency. It was a very small study, but the results were amazing. These tools can benefit you greatly. Remember, your body is an instrument that you can tune.
And on that note, speaking of tuning your body with frequencies, I finally have an opinion to share with you all on what my thoughts are on these HemiSync tapes that we talked about a few videos back. If you're on the fence about trying them, I've tried them now myself, and I can now say I absolutely recommend that you try it. My very first time using it, I loaded up the first audio file, set a 15-minute timer on my phone, and laid back in my recliner and closed my eyes. By the time my alarm went off, I was so lost in the visuals that I was seeing, my wife had to shake my foot to get my attention. I didn't even notice my alarm going off. I got much more out of it than I expected to get, and I experienced it pretty much immediately. And I'm sure everyone will have at least a slightly different experience, but I have never had a product deliver quite like that.
What if everything that we were taught about the world wars was actually just a small piece of a much, much larger picture? There's a quote, "The greatest lies ever told are the ones closest to the truth." So what if the bombing the invasion, the mass relocation of all these people wasn't just the result of two nations having a catfight, but a result of them trying to clean up the final pieces of a civilization that they erased from our history. Let's make some new memories of a forgotten past as we take a trip down memory lane. Our adventure begins in Warsaw with the Grand Domed Cathedral. As you can see, it has Tartaria written all over its details. What happened to this beautiful cathedral? It was reduced to rubble during the war. Our next stop is Belgium at the Ypres Cloth Hall. As you can see, this beautiful structure is dripping in Tartarian influence from corner to corner to corner. The unreal Gothic design, the vaulted arcades, and the sky-piercing towers. This building, unfortunately, was completely leveled in World War I. One of the more interesting places that I looked up was Nuremberg, Germany. And Nuremberg is incredible, or was before the war. You can see here, it was full of spires, cathedral-style market squares. It had an extremely Tartarian aesthetic. There is no denying. This is one of the most beautiful cities I've ever seen. Some of these structures were untouched, but most were obliterated during the war. And we have Hiroshima, Japan. As you can see before the war, the A-bomb dome had a copper dome, and you can see its Greco-Roman design. This is not at all Eastern. Where did all of this come from? The A-bomb dome was the only building left standing. One could say it withstood the test of time. You know what else withstood the test of time that was in Japan? It's in Tokyo, their train station. Look at this train station in Tokyo. It is immaculate. And it hasn't changed at all. Where are these structures coming from? Who built them? This was a reset. It was a cover-up disguised as progress. They didn't want to preserve any of these buildings. They wanted to erase them because all of this architecture didn't match their narrative. And the further back you go, the louder the evidence becomes. You ever wonder why or where the saying, "What in tarnation?" came from? It came from the Tartarian nation and their architecture, because every time you look up at these beautiful, immaculate designs, you would say to yourself, "What in tarnation?"
So I looked that up, and the phrase "what in tarnation" actually comes from early Christians not wanting to be rude. It was used in place of the phrase "what in damnation," which was considered to be vulgar. And the word tarnation comes from blending darnation, which is a polite substitute for damnation, with tarnal, which is shorthand or slang for eternal. It has nothing to do with the Tartarian structures being discovered. I did think that the buildings he chose as potential Tartarian structures were interesting, though. You typically get presented with buildings that are still standing as your evidence, but I think the ones that they tore down likely held more clues. That's probably why they decided those specific ones had to go. They were going to let the cat out of the bag.
What you are seeing here is another similarity between the ancient trees of our past and some of the trees today. You see, when the root system hits the underground water level, and you cut down the tree, it starts pouring out water like a waterfall, much like you see coming out the tops and the sides of these massive ancient trees. And perhaps that's what caused the Great Flood. Once these massive trees were cut down, could you imagine all of the water gushing out all across this realm, all at once? It wouldn't take that long to flood this world at all. And what we see now are just the remains. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
I think that's an interesting theory, and I've never heard it before. If those mountains that look like massive tree trunks where a tree was chopped down, if those really were trees, at that size, just imagine how far down the root system would have went below the surface of the earth. They would likely reach underground water pockets that we still aren't even aware of. Besides the fact that a tree that size would require a massive amount of water to continue to grow to even reach that size. This makes total sense when you think about it. This, of course, all hinges on those mountains being trees, but I think I've seen enough showing how quickly things can fossilize in certain conditions that I would feel ignorant to just write this off. It's just too plausible.
There are numerous accounts of giant skeletons being found across America, only to be taken away by the Smithsonian. In 1912, archaeological excavations of ancient mounds near Lake Delavan in Wisconsin had found skeletons of extraordinary dimensions, some of them nearly 10 feet tall. On May 4th, the New York Times picked up the story. The article tells of 18 skeletons of a quote-unquote hitherto unknown race and adds that the skulls of the skeletons were unusually large. And that was only one of over a dozen similar stories reported in newspapers in the late 19th, early 20th century.
So in the articles of the giants that were found in the late 1800s into the early 1900s, yeah, they found a lot of bones. There's some photographs in the book that show that they did find something that was phenomenal in size. I'm not talking one or two cases. There's dozens of them, and they're scattered across the U.S. And many times they're related to what's called today Indian mounds. Either in or near the mound, they found these giant skeletons.
Giant skeletal remains have been found in Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, New York, and other places around the world, many of which found their way to the Smithsonian, where they were never seen again.
Long been fascinated by legends of American giants is David Hatcher Childress.
A number of mounds in the Midwest in America were excavated starting around 1850. And in many cases, they would find skeletons of people who were in excess of 7 feet tall.
The one that was found in Bridal Veil Falls, California by a group of miners. First they found this wall with very intricate hieroglyphics. They assumed that they were finding gold behind the wall. They broke it down and they found this woman holding a child covered with fur and a strange kind of dust. The same tall female mummified remains have been found in Texas. They have been found in Death Valley. They have been found in other parts of California.
These old photographs and newspaper clippings are all that survive of these mysterious giants.
So this is the first level of kind of cover-up conspiracy when the Smithsonian got involved. And they got so involved, it got to a point, as soon as there was any reports, they employed about 200 people go out to mound sites to get all the skeletons, disappear them as quickly as possible. Some years ago, when the Colonel Ben Smith mound was opened by Professor Norris of the Smithsonian, he found the skeleton of a giant which measures 7 feet 8 inches in length. Also, a stone axe was discovered, which was huge. Again, we have the Smithsonian involved here. This is the time when they were starting really in full flow of going to all the different sites to make sure they recovered the bones.
I have an idea. Let's everyone start tagging Elon Musk in videos on X, talking about how the Smithsonian is covering up the discovery of giants and covering up the discovery of ancient Egyptian artifacts in the Grand Canyon, and let's try to get him to buy the Smithsonian and release the Smithsonian files. I'm kidding. The Smithsonian is a public-private trust, so it can't be purchased. It was established by an act of Congress, probably after they discovered that they had a use for an ancient artifacts mafia to wander around the countryside strong-arming the public into shutting up about our actual history. Unfortunately, we'll likely never get any of those artifacts back. The Smithsonian might as well be the American version of the Vatican Vault.
Right, lads, I've got an update on the SAR Pyramid Giza scanning project. Last week, I got to interview Trevor Grassi, he's a YouTuber, and he was the one that first posted the abstract of the Italian conference. If you're following the story, you know what that is. I got to interview him on my YouTube for about 45 minutes. Interestingly, when we were talking about all the scans and how we could verify the scans and what work that we'd need to do next, Trevor suggested that the best way to do that would be for them to scan an already established archaeological site like the Osiris shaft on the Giza plateau, and if they could show that the scans could accurately map the Osiris shaft, then that's like an indication that they could accurately map other things too. Well, apparently that's happened, and I'm going to show you. So according to an announcement from the original team who scanned the Khafre pyramid, they said they have scanned the Giza plateau with the Osiris shaft, and they can show not only the accurate levels of the Osiris shaft, but also the fact that it continues down even further, and there appears to be other levels and other things going on at deeper levels to the Osiris shaft. So that's a big claim. It's a big claim. But they also said that what they're in the process of doing right now is handing over the data and the software to an independent team so that they can verify all of these massive claims. So that's going to be really interesting, because if a completely independent team can replicate their results, then we're starting to get to science. Very exciting. Just quickly, if you didn't know what the Osiris shaft is, it is a well-documented, really deep 3-level underground structure that is found just off the causeway in Giza, opposite the, well, very near to the Sphinx, and it was between the Sphinx and the Khafre pyramid. So interesting. It's it was found in the 90s, I believe. Or I think people knew it was there before then, but it kind of was announced to the world in the 90s. I've been down there myself. It is incredibly spooky. It is incredibly deep, and it's evidence that there are shafts and chambers and things that are underneath the Giza plateau that we know of. So the claims that there could be more, in my eyes, seem... I think it's more likely that there's going to be shafts and tunnels that we don't know about than that there's nothing. That makes sense. Anyway, super cool. Again, we wait the results of yet more tests. There we are.
We haven't touched on this story in a while, and mostly because there really hasn't been anything going on around it. But I think this is huge. If they've already discovered and explored part of this other shaft, and the scanner is picking it up accurately, that's all the evidence I would need to start diverting funds toward an excavation if I was in charge. There's obviously something down there, and all these scholars that are trying to discredit this discovery are really going to have to step their game up if they're going to want people to stop paying attention to this now. You know, all this talk about ground penetrating radar got me thinking, and I looked up how much it would cost to get a quality entry-level LiDAR set up, and it's only about $23,000. Give it 10 years and some of that equipment is going to be easily accessible to guys like me, and we may actually finally find out what's in all those Indian mounds that are scattered all over the country. Just imagine if the average Joe could access LiDAR equipment. We'll have entire YouTube channels out there that are dedicated to discovering cold case victims. We'll have channels using LiDAR to find lost treasure. And there's going to be some guy who's going around with LiDAR equipment scanning all these mounds, showing us all the giant remains that are buried underneath them. All we got to do is sit here and wait. I wouldn't be surprised if they start thinking about passing laws to keep that kind of equipment out of the hands of the common man, or it's going to get really difficult for them to control their narrative. But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. I'll be back soon with another video. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com. And don't forget to drop a photo of your merch over in the Discord to get your photo in a video. But guys and gals, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next one.